Hello and welcome back to Prep Bites. So, starting from today, we are going to go in and build the backend for our chart application. So far, we've managed to go in and make a mock-up of our front end. So, we've used React and a few bunch of additional libraries like React.com, Redux, Frame of Motion, and so much more. So, as to go in and build up our front end. Even so, now that we have a base to go in and display all the data, all the charts and information that we're going to be providing, now comes a part where we'll be moving on to the main logic for our app to work, because we want to be able to go in and get this feature where people are able to go in and authenticate themselves, authorize themselves to be able to go in and participate in certain chats, create groups and whatnot. We already went in and discussed the features in the initial part of this particular series, and now we have to go in and create in certain APIs in order to go in and achieve those features. For whatever is required in terms of front end, we have basically went in and implemented those particular set of features. Now coming down to backend, here we are again going to be using in certain technologies and libraries and frameworks in order to go in and achieve all the features we want. Again, as I said in the initial part, this project, this particular series is going to go in and create an application with a bunch of features, but I would suggest that you can still go in and add in as many features or as different features as you want to this particular application of yours. The only thing that is basically limiting over here is you and how much creativity and how much effort you're going to be putting into this particular project. All right. In order to go in and get started, the very first thing that we'll do is we have to go in and create up a server, right? So our backend is going to involve two things, which is going to be our server and that of our database. For database, it's fairly sorted. We want to go in and make this database available to every single person. So we want it already in the internet. So I'm going to be using MongoDB Atlas for this particular purpose. It's just the same MongoDB that we're familiar with, but on the internet. So the MongoDB Atlas part is fairly simple. We'll be going through the process in which you can go in and create up an account and set up a collection for you to work with. But way before that, I'll say we should go in and make a really simple server. We'll go in and create in a bunch of APIs as well, just a few APIs just to see how exactly is this process going to be done. We'll be using Express and Node.js for creating up our server. So we're going to be starting with Node.js, and we'll create up a small basic server. We'll use Express as well so that we can create our routes with no issues at all. Okay, and then we are also going to be using in Postman. So if you're not familiar with Postman, it's a pretty good tool, especially if you want to go in and test out your backend rather than relying on having a front end and a backend servers running in side by side. If there are certain APIs that you want to go in and check, Postman kind of makes the whole process pretty easy. Okay, so let's go in and get started, shall we? Okay, so I'm going to directly jump back into my VS Code. And here, let's just put up or create a new folder for our server, right? So I'm going to just name it as live chat server. So it's in the same folder as that of my client. So there are two separate folders that I have in here. I have a folder for icons in which I just have the logo for our application. And then we have our client, which is our React application. And then here within this folder, we're going to be building up our server. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly go in and navigate into this folder so that things can be a bit more on the snappier side here. And we're going to select server and let's just open that folder up. Okay. So the very first thing we're going to go in and do is to set up our, our project over here. Okay. So we'll just go in and click on never for the time being because we'll upload this in separately. And the very first thing we're going to go in and do is to initialize. So what we'll do is we'll be using the npm init command so that we can go in and initialize our application over here. So when you go in and you run this particular command, which is npm init, it's going to ask you a bunch of information like what is the package name. By default, it'll be live chat server, version, description. If you want, I'll suggest you should add this in. Entry point is going to be index.js. So by default, it'll be index.js. If you want to change it to something else, you can change it, maybe app.js or whatever is to your liking. I'll keep it as index.js. And then we have a test command, which I don't think we're going to be, we'll go in and update our scripts later on. Okay. We have a Git repository. We'll update this up later as well. Keywords, author, you can go in and put in whatever, you can put in your name here, and then license. So that's going to be free for now. And this is okay. And that's it. So as you can see, we have went in and initialized our server at this particular point. So in the sense, we have started with our package.json, and this is the same package.json that we are also familiar with in terms of our React application as well. So this package.json is kind of going to be pretty useful for us, because here we'll be able to see all the dependencies that our application is going to have. And we are also going to be writing some custom scripts over here so as to aid with our testing. Okay. So we didn't have to go in and do much at this particular point. So what we're going to do is we'll just directly go in and create up our server. So in order to go in and create up my server, I'll just create a new folder, a new file over here. So my entry point is going to be index.js. So I'll create up a file with the same name. And this is the part where we are going to go in and install our very first dependency. And that is nothing but Express. So all I'll have to do is jump into my terminal over here, and I'm going to go npm express, so that we can install this particular framework and make our life way easier, because Express makes performing these server-based operations way easier, okay, as compared to the normal way we would have done it with just plain Node.js. Okay. So in order to go in and get started, so we need to go in and instantiate our server first. So the very first thing I will do is to go in and import our Express. So I'm going to go in and we're going to say require Express. Okay, so this is the framework that we are going to be using for our backend here, and for basically writing up all of our routes. Okay. So that's it. Once this is done, we can easily just go in and create up or fire up our server by saying const app is equal to express. You can give it any name you want. We normally go with convention, and I'm going to name this as app. So this is my server, as in such, you could say. And what this particular line will do is it will go in and instantiate our server. We want to be able to go in and listen to our server here, right? So we want our server to go in and listen to a particular port, right? So in order to go in and do this, let's just go in and say app.listen. And now there are two things that we'll need to go in and specify here. The first is going to be in which particular port is it do you want to go in and listen to. So as we're going to be running this up in our development server, let's just say we're going to go for port number 5000. Okay. And then what we could do is we can even go in and pass in a message to our terminal, just so that we know that, yeah, the server that we have is up and running. Okay, so I'm just going to put in a small message here. Let's just go in and say the server is running ... Okay, right. So it's just going to go in and say that. So that is it. So what we have right now is 3 lines of code, which basically will go in and start up our server, and it will keep going in and listening to this particular port of ours, which is 5000. So we're going to be going in and creating in some routes. But first and foremost, let's just go in and get this running. Okay. So the way to go in and do this is fairly simple. If you want, you could go in and create up a custom script over here. Let's say I'm going to say, or we could do it directly as well. So I'm going to say node, and the entry point that I have is index.js. So I'll say index.js. And as you can see, our server is running, and it is currently listening at the port, which is port 5000. Okay, so that's pretty good. But rather than going and writing this command here, I'll say it would be better if you just go in and set up another custom script. So let's say start, and what we'll do is we know our entry point here, and my entry point is going to be the index file, right? So I'm going to say node index.js. If you wish to go in and change the name, I would suggest that you can go in and change the same script or update in the scripts over here. Apart from that, this just makes the whole process way easier. So instead of writing node index.js, I'm just going to go in and say npm start, and this should go in and have our server running here as well. So this makes the process a bit more easier. But let's see, okay, what else can we do with this? All right, so we have a server running and it is listening to this particular port right now. So the very next thing we'll be going in and doing is to just create up a sample API. Let's just create a basic API at the point for the time being, so that we can actually go in and create in some routes. Okay, so that we are able to send in some information. Okay, all right. So what we'll do is, see, the idea is really simple. We are going to be using so for the communication part over here, we are going to be using some HTTP request methods. And it's fairly simple to go in for here. The two most common ones that we'll be using is the get and post method. Apart from that, we have a few additional methods like post, delete, and so much more. But these are the two, like get and post are the most commonly used HTTP request methods. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here as well. So within our server, so I'm going to use the get method in order to go in and specify the route for a API call. So I'll say, so this is going to be for the root directory itself. And then we can go in and provide this with a callback function over here that takes two parameters, which is going to be our request and response. Okay, so I'm going to go in and specify this here. And what we'll do is, so for the time being, we have not created, we don't have a database, we haven't written any logic, we haven't created any schemas, anything at all. Okay, so I'll just go in and log a message. Okay, let's just say if you go in and make a call to this particular to this API, to this route, which is going to be localhost 5000, it is going to go in and send in back a response. Let's just make the response to be a string. Okay, and I'll say API is running. Okay, there you go. I'm going to say this up. Okay, and now one of the things we'll have to do is, as you can see, every time I go in and make some changes, the previous server that I have is still running. So even if I'm going to go in and take you into my browser, we'll not be able to go in and see much. All right. So even if I go in and jump into my browser here and let's just make a call to our API. So it's listening into port 5000, right? So I'm going to just say 5000 and it's saying cannot get this particular route. So the reason is because our server that is currently running is still from the previous iteration, because every time we make some changes, we have to restart our server, right? So if I jump back into my VS Code over here and within my terminal, I'm just going to stop the server. And then let's just do npm start back again. And now we have a server running with all the updated changes. Okay, so now if I jump back into my browser, so we're going to go in and use Postman later on. But as you can see, now that I've restarted my server, the API is currently functioning. And if I'm going to make a request to this particular route, which is so in this case, it's just localhost 5000, you can see I'm able to go in and send in some message here. Okay, so this is all in all good, but the problem is that every time you go in and you make a change, you have to go in and end up restarting your server, right? So in order to make this thing a bit more easier on for us, because we'll be making a bunch of changes, and if you want to go in and test it again, time on and time in out again, then I will say that there is a particular package that will help us immensely, and that is nothing but NodeMon. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly go in and stop my server, and what we'll do is we'll do a global install of this particular library. Let's just go in and say NodeMon. Okay, so I messed up spelling, so it's definitely not going to go in and work. I'm just going to wait it to fail and this finish. Just go in and fix the name. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going in and installing this particular package called as NodeMon. And the best thing about this is that it kind of makes it so that it automatically goes in and reloads your server. So it kills the server and opens it back up again every time we make a change. So it makes the whole process of doing backend development a bit more on the easier side, because you don't need to worry about going in and doing npm start every time you make a change. So what I could do is I could just go in and now, so if I want to go in and launch my server, I could now go in and run this command, which is nodemon index.js. And if I press enter, let's just go in and see, cannot be loaded because running script is disabled on the system. See about execution policy. So we'll have to go in and fix this. So this is a common error which, with the execution policy part is a common error that you go in and come across with NodeMon, I'll say, but it's a really easy fix that you can go in and make by just running in a really simple command. I'll take you through the process as well that you can go in and utilize in case you come across the same error. So in order to go in and fix this particular error up, all you'll have to do is just open up your command prompt in administrator mode, and you are going to go in and just put in the command which is PowerShell set execution policy as remote signed. So you are just going to go in and add this in. You can press enter and it's not going to do much. But once this process is done, you can go in and come back into your terminal, and let's try running in our command back again. And as you can see that our NodeMon is successfully working. Okay. And now the thing is, as you can see, the server is running. That's pretty good. So if I take you back into my browser and I make another call onto my API, yeah, it's the same thing. But what's the difference, right? Why exactly did we use NodeMon? I'll show you. So the idea is really simple. If I go and make some changes here, I'm going to put 123. I save this. I don't need to restart my server. All I'll have to do is just go into my browser. And if I make another call, you can see the updates are now live. So it kind of saves in a bunch of time, especially when you don't have to go in and restart your server time in and time out. Okay. So as you can see, we have already went in and have a running server, and also a really simple API which just goes in and returns a string. Okay, so I think that's good. A few of the things we'll go and take care of right now in here itself is that, as you can see, our port number is public and we wouldn't want to go in and make this available to people. So in order to go in and achieve, like basically to abstract this information, what we can do is we can use another package, okay, which is called, so I'm going to create one, let me open up one more terminal over here. And we're going to go in and use this particular library, which is called as .env, to kind of take care of the scenario here. So the idea is really simple. What we want to do is, see, as you can see, this port number is whichever is going to be my port number is like blatantly available to everyone at this point, because if I'm going to go and host it somewhere, they'll go in and get access to, or they'll know exactly at which particular port my server is listening to, right? So I don't want to go in and make this available to people. Okay, so what we want to do is we kind of want to go in and prevent this. Okay, so that's basically the reason why we're going with this particular package, which is nothing but our .env. And the way to use this particular package is also fairly simple. So much like everything that we're using in here, like Express, first and foremost, we're going to go in and import it. So I'm going to write .env is equal to require, let's just write .env. Okay, env. So once this is done, we can go in and invoke this config function. Okay, so this is what goes in and initializes this. So I'm going to say .env.config, and let's just invoke. Okay, there you go. Now, apart from this, there is one other thing we want to do, and that is to create a new file over here with the, so the name of the file that we can have is going to be .env, which is the environment that this particular server of ours is going to listen to. Okay, so env stands for environment. Okay, so here I don't need to do much. I'm going to just create up a variable that's called as port, and in my case I'm just going to put it up as 5000, because that's going to be the port where my app will be listening. Okay, my server is going to be listening. All right, so oops, there you go. I'm just going to go in and undo this whole thing and write it down again. 5000. I'm going to save this. Now, the good thing here is now I don't need to go in and specifically write 5000 at every single point. I can now just go in and get this variable, which is the port variable. So I'm going to write const port. Okay, so I'm going to get the value from this port variable, right? So I'll just say we have to go in and write process.env, and then you'll be able to see that we have that particular variable that we had created. Okay, so I'm going to say process.env. So whatever is the value that we're going to give in port, whatever, you can go in and change this in at any point of time you want. And if this is not available as in such, we can just go in and say, yeah, sure, why not? Why don't you go in and just listen to port 5000? Okay, so instead of going in and writing 5000 here, I can just specifically say port, and it'll go in and fetch whichever port we have specified. And server is running. Now, what I can do is, if you want, you can print it out here as well, but let's just see. So now if I jump back into my server, as you can see, yeah, everything is running. So every time I go in and make a change, if I save it, you can see NodeMon actually causes my server to go in and restart, and eventually saving us a bunch of time. It saves a lot of time. And even if I go back into my browser and make another call, you can see that everything is functioning as it should. Okay, now another thing, another tool that we are going to be using in quite a lot is called as Postman. Okay, so Postman is really good, especially when it comes to going in and checking or testing your APIs. So here I have, we just have a really simple API that is created. So all you want to do in Postman, it's fairly simple. You can go in and select which type of HTTP request is it that you want to make. I'm going to set it as get because we created a get request. Okay, so this is going to be the request. We're going to be making a get request to this particular port of ours. So at 5000, and if I just go in and click on send, you can see that it is giving us back the same data, okay, that we had provided in with that of from our API. Okay, so Postman is also going to be another such tool that we'll be using in quite a bit. It's fairly easy to install. You can go in and visit their official website, get it downloaded from there, and that's it. It just works straight out of the box. You select the HTTP request method and you specify from where is it supposed to go in and make that request, and this kind of go in and makes the whole process a bit better because you don't need to rely on your front end to go in and check the data. You can just use Postman and it will go in and show you what your API goes in and does. It also comes with a bunch of additional tools that are pretty great when it comes especially for backend development. But for the time being though, I'll say this kind of goes in and gets it started with creating our backend for our chat application. Okay. So that will be all for this particular video. Starting from next session, we are going to go in and try to create up our database. We'll create up our schemas, what exactly or how exactly we are going to be structuring our data. We'll create up our database, we'll link it to a server, and then we'll slowly start giving it more and more functionality as we keep going through. So that will be all, people. We'll see you in the next video.